As we've said, this February month is at the Word Community Church is Celebrate Culture Month. I've been loving it. You guys loving it? Yes? I love it. Maybe it's just me. Okay, so it's one thing, I gotta, and this is kind of where it gets a little personal. You know, obviously you know I love God sightings. Well, today I'm going to share a God sighting, and this one really landed in my neighborhood. So I just gotta be honest, it's been a real joy to be at the Word Community Church the last 3.5 years or so, and the whole reconciliation, racial diversity and stuff has really become a real passion of mine because of you guys, quite honestly. And I just feel like it's something God's really putting in my spirit. Well, it's one thing to champion something because you love it. It's a whole other thing for it to land right in your world. So many of you know I'm Armenian, right? Represent First Christian Nation. You know what I'm saying. So, anyways, so I got the privilege, and really because of your guys' kindness, to be at an unbelievable conference in Franklin, Tennessee last week. It was unbelievable, called Recreate, with like this elite gathering of eagles from all over the world. It was amazing. Well, how many of you know that song, Revelation Song? Yeah? Well, that came out of Gateway Church from Austin, Texas, and their band came out to lead worship for us. Unbelievable, like 11 people that were all A+, musicians, but they were totally kingdom. It was amazing. Well, we had this unbelievable communion time that Pastor and I are going to probably share later. It was amazing. And then we went into this worship time. Well, instead of the team being on the stage, they were actually on the ground, and they were in a circle, all facing themselves. So we just kind of gathered around. So nobody was the focus except Jesus, you know? I loved it. It was so awesome. Well, I just happened to sit right next to, I guess you'd call it the front row, and right next to me was their viola player. Okay, this guy was bananas. Just unbelievable. But when they started the worship time, I could tell he was kind of fiddling with his this monitor or whatever, and so I knew he had some work to do. I get it, you know. So I'm like, hey, what do you need, man? He's like, my monitor, I need it up. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I just ran back to the sound console. This is in the conference. Like, hey, the viola guy needs some more on his wedge. I ran back to my seat, and so kind of during that time, we kind of connected. It was an unbelievable worship time, you know. I don't know if I can explain this. You know, I'm so often leading, so to be able to just be in a place and just be led was amazing, you know. But during that time, it was just such a wonderful go God time, you know, and we were kind of vibing together in that time. At the end of it, the viola player, he just kind of gives me a high five. He's like, man, it's a wonderful time. We hugged each other, and I'm like, hey, man, you know, my name is John. What's your name? And he said, my name is Orhan. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm like, so what ethnicity are you, man? Okay, now, before I finish the story, we had already connected as brothers. We'd already hugged. It was like this oneness. We're linked before, you know, as bros. And he said, I'm Turkish. Now, if any of you don't know about the Armenian genocide, I'll tell you how it gets even more personal, because my grandfather lost everything he had 3 different times and fled Turkey from the Armenian genocide. He had to flee because he was Armenian. My great-grandfather was taken up on a mountain on a death march and shot. Okay? So we hug. Hey, John, Orhan, what ethnicity are you? He said, I'm Turkish. Okay? I don't think I've ever met a Christian brother who's a Turk in my whole life. All right? Not to mention one that we totally connected at this, and then as this artist deal, there was you know, we were just kind of linked. It was like this God setup. You know, I'm being really honest with you. And it was like he had me help this guy that needed something in his monitor. We connected during this amazing, vulnerable worship time and connected as brothers. And then by the time I found out who he was ethnically, I couldn't do anything about it. I couldn't step back and be like, oh, okay, pound it, have a good one, huh? I couldn't do that. And it was like, but there was the God part of me that didn't want to. As overwhelming as the feeling was, I didn't hardly know what to say. We just kind of stared at each other. I said, I'm Armenian, you know, and it was kind of this, whoa, you know. We ended up connecting later and sharing. Somehow I started sharing about, I just started the new solo project called Radiant, working on this new album. And he looks at me. Now again, this guy is amazing. He's actually played in the Berlin Symphony, top 3 symphonies in the world. This guy is legit, okay? And he looks at me, he's like, man, I'll play on your record, man. Wow. I'm like, bro, first of all, pros don't do that, They don't say, hey, can I play on your project? They're just so good, they wait for to be asked. But he was just like, I'll play on your project, man. I'm like, oh my gosh. I was like, dude, you're going to play on my album. And I said, man, I'll sing on anything you ever need. And we gave each other like this hug, and it was like unbelievable. Maybe you can show the picture if you kind of see. That's maybe the lights can come on. That's my brother Orhan from Austin, Texas. And it was one of those things like, I can't believe this is happening. And it was like this reconciliation story that God was setting up. And so, God willing, Orhan's going to play on my next album called Radiant. And I didn't later find out, he's like actually a professor at University of Texas in viola. So this guy's like the man. But we were even texting yesterday. I feel like God is setting up this whole nother level of personal impact and what he's going to do about racial reconciliation. So that's my story of a God siding with my Turkish brother.